What's going on, Mountaineer Nation? Welcome back into the Country Roads Webcast here for episode 198 here in season 7 of the Country Roads Webcast. Going to talk a little bye week here, some stat review, going to talk a little bit of revised season predictions as well after 4 games here in the 2024 season. Got a lot to talk about here, so let's get into it. And joining me to help me discuss this, of course, my two lovely co-hosts. We've got Bradley.
Where? Oh, right. Oh, I'm here. Gotcha. Hey, guys.
And Steven.
Hey, what's going on, everybody?
All right, boys. So here we are sitting at 2-2, heading into our first bye week of the year. Got 2 bye weeks this year, both of them well positioned. This one probably couldn't have come at a better time. Got a few injuries we're looking to recover from before we hit the road and take on the Oklahoma State Cowboys. How are you guys feeling heading into this first bye week? Steven, kind of your overall opening thoughts heading into this bye week here in 2024.
I guess like I said the other day, there's a huge difference from being 2-2, than being 1-3. So that part I feel good about, and hopefully a lot of guys can get back to close to 100% and be ready to go in 2 weeks.
Yeah, definitely. I think it comes at a perfect time for us to get right on the injury side of things, get a lot of guys healthy, get back to close to 100% as we possibly can heading into that tough contest there in Stillwater. Brad, coming off of a tough loss in the backyard brawl where we had a 10-point lead and then choked it away, and then of course kind of the opposite of that coming in the game against Kansas, down 11, and we come back, get the come from behind win. How are you feeling heading into this bye week here in 2024, sitting 2 up, 2 down after losing one and winning one there, at the last second?
Yeah, absolutely. And I haven't had a chance to get on here and talk about it yet because it's been busy. As you guys can see, I'm in a hotel room right now, so I am actually on the road for the next 3 weeks. So um, lots of this, lots of hotel room in the back. But yeah, I will say at least coming out to Kansas, it was a game you couldn't lose. If you lose that game, like you're plummeting in the absolute wrong direction. Coming out and winning is massive. Like I can't explain to you how massive it is. But to that point, you won coming back from 11 down, 12 down. What was it? You know what I mean? It wasn't. It wasn't in any way a comforting win. So you can't even say that you feel that much better after. You had to come back. We had a great 2 minute drill. We know we're good at that, but the rest of the game falls flat. We were lucky enough to be in the position to win this one, but we're not always going to be in that way if we don't play well for the rest of the game. So not feeling a ton great. Also, to that point, Neil Brown has not had a wonderful record when it comes to coming off bye weeks. He's struggled to get it right. His teams come out flat. They come out unenergetic, and you walk into Oklahoma State flat-footed, and you're going to get jumped. So you got it's one of those places you got to walk in ready to win. So that's kind of my immediate feelings going into the bye week, coming off the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, definitely. 100% agree with you. Neil Brown struggled off a bye week some in, his early tenure. But I think if there's anything that's given us advantage, it's, Oklahoma State had to play Utah. They got to play Kansas State this upcoming week. We'll talk more about that towards the close of this episode when we make our Big 12 picks. But West Virginia on a bye week, Oklahoma State playing, two of the top teams in the conference, having played Utah and then having to play Kansas State. Maybe that'll be an advantageous situation for West Virginia heading into that game again, heading in there in Stillwater, and maybe they'll be able to pick up a win. Advantageous situation maybe, but West Virginia at this point 1-0 in Big 12 conference play. That's kind of where we wanted to be. We talked about this 5-game stretch, how important it was for West Virginia. Right now they're 1-0 in it, 4 games left. Hopefully they'll be able to come out on the winning side more often than not, and we'll talk about that more coming up here in the show, but let's get into some stats here. All right, season stats wise for the Mountaineers: 902 yards for Garrett Green, 7 TDs versus 4 interceptions. He has upped the completion percentage a little bit. It was 53% last year, up to 57% this year. We were hoping to be 60 plus, so he's improved, but not quite at where we wanted to see him be. 902 yards for him. CJ Donaldson, 284 yards, 3 touchdowns. Garrett Green, 209 yards, 2 touchdowns. Jaheim White, 194 yards and 3 touchdowns. Then we look at the receiving side of things. Hudson Clement really came on last game, and he now leads the Mountaineers in receiving in both yards and receptions, 14 receptions, 231 yards, and a touchdown. Traylon Ray, 165 yards. Cole Taylor, 133 yards, and 2 touchdowns. 121 yards for Rodney Gallagher playing both sides of the field there. And he, of course, had the big touchdown there in the last game. Game winner for his first career touchdown there. Jaden Brain, not quite where we thought he'd be. 2 catches, 88 yards. So he's been a big play threat, but hopefully we'll see him to continue to improve that here. When you look at these offensive stats for the Mountaineers, what really stands out to you, Steven, and what do you hope to see improve here in the last, 2/3 of the season?
Well, one thing that really kind of jumps out to me is, they've, like we've said several times, they've tried to really make GG drop back and try to be a pocket passer, and he's only passed for 7 touchdowns, and he's, ran for, what is it, three? How many did it say he ran for? I think it was three. Two.
Two.
I thought it was three. Yeah, but anyway, like, I don't know. I just think that that's a glaring issue that we need to face when it comes to the offense. Is the coaches need to understand what GG does well and just let him do that. Of course, I mean, he said it in the post game presser. Neil Brown did that they want to run him more, but they, for whatever reason, what the defenses are throwing at him, it doesn't allow them to. So I don't know what changes throughout the game that makes it so much more adaptable for him to be able to do so. But I think as an offense, we need to figure out how to make that happen a lot more. But other than that, CJ's having a good year so far. I'd like to brag about being somebody that predicted that.
Yeah, good point there. Nearly 6 yards per carry. And, unfortunately, Jaheim White not quite having the year that I expected him to have thus far. But I think a lot of teams are really keen on the West Virginia run game and hope to see maybe, this past game against Kansas, where West Virginia was able to find some things downfield in the passing game. Maybe that helps open up the run game moving forward. But, Brad, when you look at the West Virginia offensive stats, what really stands out to you? What do you hope to see improve? And what do you think has been a standout thus far in the 2024 season?
It's nice seeing Garrett Green's completion percentage raise up a little bit, and he kind of has been more consistent in those passes. And I think that his wide receivers have been getting, well, Hudson Clement mostly. That dude's been a baller. Um, have been given his best looks, I think, that we've seen from wide receivers in a while. I don't think it's stellar, but I do think that it's been better play than what we've seen in a minute. But it feels like the normal offense. I think what mostly has stood out to me has been the amount of kind of like passing that Garrett's done. I think that he's kind of trying to take his game up to where he's trying to pass more to fit in more to the offense. And I think he's lost part of what made him special. I think that letting him be loose on his feet and go out and make a play is something that hasn't happened as much this year. And I think that some of that has come from him trying to stay inside the lines and make things work with his arm. So I think that as the season goes on, I think he's going to get more comfortable in that, which is only good for us. And I think that we're seeing the benefits of that now. I think as you saw him get more loosened up and in his element, he made those plays happen. But you also look at people like Cole Taylor. It seems like he's only getting the ball when it's big play time, and he'll just do it 3 or 4 plays in a row, big drive, big drive, big drive, and then he's just gone. And I don't know if it's because all of a sudden they're like, hey, there's somebody you got to focus on or somebody you don't got to focus on. But yeah, it just seemed like a real bit of a diluted Neil Brown offense. It's been slower, less explosive, less dynamic than what we saw last year for some reason. I can't put my thumb on that specifically. I think it's a lot of little things, but yeah, just a bit blah.
Gosh, I can't agree more about the whole Cole Taylor thing. I remember thinking, as we went into the weather delay, um, first of all, the game felt like it was two different games, like the one before the weather delay and then the one afterwards.
Yeah.
But I remember going into the weather delay thinking, like, why can't we find Cole Taylor in the passing game? Where's he been today? And then as soon as they come back from the weather delay, I believe they hit him for a big chunk of yardage to set them up in the red zone, and then they hit him on the very next play or 2 plays later to score on a passing play to Cole Taylor. But I think he's been the common denominator when we've had our most success on offense, is they start utilizing him a little bit more, and that's always been the case for as long as I can remember for West Virginia offenses. If we have a good tight end and we use them well, then our offense is usually successful.
Yeah, I think he can definitely be a weapon for us moving forward. Look at those last two drives, really. He made the big plays when it counted most. And like you said, Stephen, there, I think we could afford to, account for him more throughout the game as a whole. But right there, when it mattered most, he made the big plays, catching the touchdown, catching the 2-point conversion, 11 catches on the year, 133 yards, and 2 touchdowns for Cole Taylor. Hopefully, we continue to see that increase. As we look at the Mountaineers here, offensive grades throughout the 2024 season. And when we look at the rush offense, West Virginia right there down to 11th, which is not something that we expected to see there. They have the 11th highest rush offense grade with a 75.2. But when we look at pass offense grades, West Virginia, they're also at 11 with a 70.6 offensive grade there. Run blocking, West Virginia, they're third in the conference with a 75.0 grade. And then we flip over to the other side. We look at the defense. West Virginia, of course, has struggled in that area. They are 15th out of 16 teams in defensive grade with a 71.6. But the bright spot of that has been the run defense. West Virginia currently has the number 2 run defense in the Big 12, according to PFF, with an 89.4 grade. So they've really done a good job there in rushing defense. They've also done a decent job in pass rush defense, top half of the conference there with an 80.6 overall grade. Coverage has been the big down point for West Virginia. They ranked last in the Big 12 in coverage with a 45.2 grade. And so as we look at this, we've talked a little bit about offense. I think defense is the big area where the West Virginia Mountaineers need to improve here. As we look at the standouts here on the defensive side, I'll scroll down to that there. Anthony Wilson racking up a ton of tackles. Josiah Trotter racking up a ton of tackles. But I think it's the back half of that defense that really stands to improve a lot. We've brought in some new starters with Jacoby Spells and TJ Crandall in the previous game for the Mountaineers. But I think West Virginia, if they want to continue to have success, they're 1-0 in the Big 12 right now. But if they want to continue to compete in this conference, I think they've got to have some big improvements there on the back half of the defense. Wouldn't you agree there, Brad?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the most obvious thing of our whole entire team, and it's been the most obvious thing for a couple of years that defensive back position just got to do something at this point. It's got to be something and anything. I don't think anybody really knows what's going on back there outside of the coaching staff, and it's just at this point. I hope that we get something pieced together. But looking at this, I can say that it's a lot more pleasing to see Josiah Trotter, Trey Lathan, Tyron Bradley, T.J. Jackson leading our tackles instead of
Definitely.
Aubrey Burks. Even though Aubrey Burks was out, but people in this position, that feels a lot better. And so I agree with you. I think the defensive line, defensive front has been stellar. T.J. Jackson was looking great. We got some things working up there.
Agreed 100%. And that brings me to, talking about TJ Jackson a little bit here. Let's pull up the NCAA stats here. And as we see here right now, TJ Jackson tied for second in the country in amounts of TFLs, tackles for a loss there, 8.5 on the year. And that's without him being a starter until, about the third game of the season. So I think TJ Jackson's really standing out for this West Virginia Mountaineer defense at this point, and he's been a solid player. And I think that with the back half of the defense really struggling a little bit, that's one area we have to look to continue to, put some pressure on the quarterback, whether it's TJ Jackson, whether it's Tyron Bradley. I think that both of those guys have performed well early in the season. And I think that's kind of the remedy for West Virginia. Put some pressure on the passer if your back half of the defense is going to struggle a little bit. But Stephen, what are your thoughts on the West Virginia defense here? Now 4 games into the season, do you think that they've got enough within them to be able to, compete and lead this team to maybe compete in this conference moving forward here in 2024? Or do you think that West Virginia's offense is going to have to be the catalyst if they want to compete moving forward here and be a competitor in the Big 12 conference?
I think we have the capability of being successful on defense, and I think even looking at the numbers, I think it proves it a little bit. If we can just figure it out on with the safeties and the cornerbacks, and figure out the coverage, I mean, I think that it's not going to be a perfect defense by any means, but I think that it'd be good enough to at least compete in this conference going forward. But I think Tyron Bradley, just as much to me as T.J. Jackson has been effective on on each of the last couple of games he's played. Even though we weren't successful a couple of weeks ago, he still had he still made plays in that game. So you know what I mean. Our linebacking core is solid. Our defensive line has proven to be solid as well. I think that if we can just figure it out and be on the linebackers in the secondary, then yes, I do think that we could be successful. But with all that being said, I just don't know if I'm. I hate to keep harping on the guy, but I really don't think that they're going to be successful with Jordan Leslie as their coordinator. I just he hasn't been able to figure out any type of adjustments and any type of anything in the secondary since Jamal Adai left. So that
Good
doesn't
point.
really give me any kind of confidence going forward for those guys. But I think we have the talent back there to do so if we could get some of those things figured out. But that's just a big if for me. Especially, I do think, as much as negative, I guess, as I may have seemed on them, I think that the way that Kansas game ended, I really think that could be a catapult on like going forward on how your offense operates. They really seem to, in the later moments of that game, really reminded me of how they operated in the bowl game last year against UNC when we talked about how impressive that offense looked throughout the entirety of that game. Um, so hopefully, we've that'll give us some momentum moving forward with, I guess, offensive chemistry. Um, so yeah, I really do believe that. I don't know. I don't know how close we'll get to contending for the Big 12 championship this year. But with as wide open as this conference really is right now, if you can get that part figured out, then you might have a chance.
Definitely. We want to take a look at the numbers there as far as stats are concerned. That's kind of what we have there. I kind of scrolled through them there on the screen as according to ESPN there as we saw going through there. But other than that, gentlemen, before we get into a Big 12 preview for the upcoming week, I wanted to ask you guys because here we are, a third of the way through the season now. West Virginia sits 2 up, 2 down. We had our season record predictions heading into the season. We were all feeling pretty optimistic. I think a lot of that is credit to the way that the coaches kind of preached about this team going in. And, we can talk about that a little bit, of course. A little bit of coach speak maybe involved there because maybe things aren't as quite as optimistic as we felt like they were heading into the season, but we were all feeling pretty good about this team heading into 2024. But now we've got 4 games down. We're sitting at 2-2. I kind of wanted to touch base with you guys, maybe get your revised season predictions now. How are you guys feeling about this Mountaineer football team with 8 games left? I think we all had, 9+ wins heading into 2024, but sitting at 2-2, heading into this first bye week of the season, kind of what's your revised season prediction? How are you feeling about the Mountaineers now with 8 games left here in 2024, Brad?
Yeah, I think going to this point, I had us 3-1. I had us losing Penn State anyway. Never would have imagined we would have lost to Pitt, but maybe they're better than we thought they were. But we are definitely to this point um, not as good of a football team as I thought we were going to be walking into this season. So definitely a bit more pessimistic. To that point, I think the Big 12 is still open. I think that people at the top have shown that they might not be at the top, and people at the bottom have shown maybe they don't deserve to be at the bottom. Everybody's got their own 14th story. So I think that we've still got a chance. And I think all the talent in the world is in this team, and we've always believed that. We've always believed in this team. And so, our frustrations come from, the talent not being used and, keep on saying it every year. And you could say that this is year 6. You can say that this is year 3. You can say that this is year 0. We got a talented team, and there's no more excuses. So we've got to start getting up and getting ready to play games, and we've got to coach them perfectly, find margins. But I think that we should got every chance in the world to run the table in the Big 12 if we get our mojo back together. Why not us? Why not have your moment where you get together and kind of tune things up as you go along? But that would be special. That would be spectacular. That would be doing something monumental. Can you go undefeated for the rest of your season? Can you win out the Big 12? Having shown what you've shown so far this year, that's asking a lot. So I don't expect you to do that. Bowl games a must. 8 wins, 9 wins, I think is still what we should expect from this team with all the talent that they have and everything that they've got going on. If you can't get a defense together to get 8, 9 wins with the offense and the talent and the seniority that you have, um, you got to make some permanent changes. You got to at least get to that point with what you got.
Agreed. Agreed. I think that we were all feeling, pretty good heading into this season. Neil Brown even mentioned, in some press conferences heading into the season that they were looking to take this from a 9-win team to a 10 or 11-win team, which I think kind of factors into our optimism, us putting on the, gold and blue glasses heading into the season with our predictions. But, I'm right there with you. I think that at this point, you got to at least get to a bowl game, maybe get a win in the bowl game, and I'm thinking, 7-5, 8-4 at this point versus my 10-2 preseason prediction. But Steven, how are you feeling now? I know heading into the Kansas State, the Kansas Jayhawks game, we were both feeling pretty pessimistic. We kind of got proved wrong with there. West Virginia came out on the, victorious end of that one, kind of, exceeding our expectations, I guess, heading into that game. They kind of showed us a little bit of something there. And now they've got a bye week to get healthy. They've got a big stretch here coming up. We talked a lot about this 5-game stretch heading into the season. They're 1-0 currently in this 5-game stretch. So I guess, as it comes to your season prediction, how are you feeling as far as your revised prediction here for the Mountaineers in 2024 after, 4 games into the season? They're sitting at 2-2. How do you feel the rest of the season is going to play out for West Virginia? Do you think they have a chance in this Big 12 conference?
Um, I, I use the term chance loosely, but yes, I think they, with as wide open as the conference is, they still do have a chance. Going into the Kansas game, I even said that I wanted them to prove me wrong. I wanted them to show me something of resiliency, I guess, some fight and some heart instead of just rolling over, which is what it seemed like they had did in some of the previous games. Um, so I think it's a tall task, an extremely tall task to ask this team to go undefeated in the Big 12 conference. From here on out, I just don't think that that's realistic to think that they could do that with you know, with the teams that they have to play. I think every team left on our schedule at one point or another has proven that they can play some legitimate football. Um, and what we thought was the toughest portion of that, from playing Oklahoma State all the way up until Arizona, has proven to not end there. UCF has looked really really good. We talked earlier about Texas Tech and how at times they've looked bad, but at times they've also looked really good, at least on offense. Um, so the rest of this schedule is going to be extremely tough. But from what I've seen, I'm going to be what I think is optimistic and say 7-5. I think that if you go 7-5, you still get to a bowl game. You can possibly go 8-5. Uh, so I think that that's still attainable. But I don't know. Like I said, hopefully they prove me wrong again and they come out and they do they do win, compete for the Big 12 championship, or we're at least in a spot to compete for the Big 12 title you know at least about week 9, week 10.
Yeah, I think that when you look at the conference race right now, it's literally wide open. When you look at Kansas State getting upset, Oklahoma State taking a loss, I think that you got a good chance of at least one team that's in that Big 12 conference championship game having 2 losses. And you're thinking, why not West Virginia? They've got as good a chance as anyone to get into this conference race. And as it stands right now, you're 1-0 in conference, and if West Virginia can find a way to get at least, I think 3 wins over these next 4 games, then they're setting themselves up for a pretty good spot here in that conference race moving forward. But Brad, how are you feeling about West Virginia's chances in this conference race now? We've talked updated season predictions. Do you think West Virginia still has a chance to make it to Arlington, maybe get a chance in that Big 12 conference championship game?
Yeah, like you said, we're 1-0. You got as good chances as the people that are 0-1, or better chances than the people that are 0-1. So why not?
Yep.
Agreed.
Why not?
Agreed. It's wide open right now. West Virginia sitting in a pretty good spot right now. Got a bye week, and we talked about Oklahoma State having to play Utah, then having to play Kansas State. Maybe that puts West Virginia in an advantageous position heading into that game in Stillwater, a place where they've struggled to get wins. But, Neil Brown does have a win there in Stillwater, so maybe they have a better chance in that game than a lot of people expect. And if West Virginia can find a way to get a win there, they put themselves in a pretty good position moving forward. Steven, I know you were talking, 7 or 8 wins for West Virginia moving forward here when we talked revised season predictions. But do you think West Virginia still has a chance to maybe reach that conference championship game here in 2024?
I mean, it depends on how they do over the next month. How I feel about that. Um, right now, no, I don't think so. Um, but anything can happen. Hopefully, they use this bye week to get better in the secondary. Um, but if I don't know, just if you can't get it figured out throughout the entirety of the off season, when you knew your secondary was going to have some issues, and you know what I mean, you tried to fill those pieces. I just don't. I don't know what you're going to find that's going to be able to fix it within a 2 week period. We've got talent back there that's proven themselves to be good football players, and they're not being put in the positions to make good football plays. And I don't know. I think that's kind of tragic when you think about it for players' careers moving forward, and how really, like, I wasn't going to touch on this yet, but really it kind of like moves into how I've talked highly about them in the recruiting space. Um, players will look at that. That's the type of things right there that make those top level players that we always talk about. That always, I mean, you're always going to lose a lot of talent to these big schools, the blue bloods. But I think that's why West Virginia loses out on even more of them that we should be in contention to get. Is because they've proven that they can't really develop players in certain position. At least this coaching staff has proven that. And I mean, I know that they've gotten some players drafted. You know, what I mean, Colt McKivitt's doing well. I think Dante's doing well. And I'm not harping on any of those guys, but I don't know. West Virginia just I think that this coaching staff's got to do a better job of. I don't know. For back, I guess lack of better way of putting it is stop fixing what isn't broke. Uh, and start trying to focus on what is broke and trying to fix that.
Guys, that's kind of what I want to touch on there is stats, our revised season predictions. And then we're going to talk a little bit about Big 12 conference here coming up in week 5. West Virginia's on an off week, but we still want to make our picks for week 5 here in the Big 12 moving forward. But any other thoughts, anything you wanted to touch on that we didn't get a chance to touch on here in the early portion of this episode here, Stephen?
Uh, no, I think one thing I just wanted to mention about one thing I think could at least make the running game a little bit better and more efficient is you spoke about being able to spread the defense out sideline to sideline with Gigi. Uh, for the life of me, I can't figure out why we're running we're running CJ to the outside and Jaheim up the middle when it should be the other way around. And I think that's why that kind of role reversal that you've seen is a lot of the reason why that you're not seeing success, I guess, in the running game like we really want to or should be seeing. So hopefully they can. That's one thing that I hope that they can get fixed moving forward.
Honestly, it's probably just some like Neil Brown big brain scheme where he's like, if I play the whole season running stretch plays with CJ Donaldson,
I mean, CJ's a
and,
dog. Don't get me wrong,
and
but like,
slam plays with Jaheim White, and then all of a sudden, as soon as I hit Big 12 play, I'm just going to absolutely turn it around and do the exact opposite of that.
you gotta hope.
It's just like one of those things where it just seems like nonsense, right? Like you're just doing the exact opposite of what you feel like you should be doing.
But West Virginia's run game, either way you look at it, needs to improve moving forward because a lot of teams have been keying on that. But if West Virginia can't get that going, it's going to be tough to succeed moving forward here. But heading into this off week, West Virginia in a good position, 1-0 in Big 12 conference play. That's all we could ask for. like we talked about, in the Kansas review, I think 2-2 a lot better than 1-3, and of course 1-0 in the Big 12 a lot better than 0-1 heading into this off week. But if you personally don't want to have an off week, there's one thing that can help you from ever having an off week, and that's Magic Mind, guys. Magic Mind will keep you on at all times here, no matter what season of your life that you're in. Magic Mind will keep you focused, will give you that mental clarity, will reduce your anxiety, will continue to, have that mental focus that you need and everything involved in with that. Not only is it good for you, but it's good for others as well. As any purchase that you make of Magic Mind, they donate to mental health charities. You get the 100% money back guarantee within 100 days of your purchase. And of course, here at the Country Roads Webcast, we can offer you a discount code, which will make that even better for you there, kind of give you that cherry on top when it comes to that purchase of Magic Mind. The best mental performance shot that you can get. A lot of other energy products leave you feeling jittery. You get that crash later in the day. But with Magic Mind, that doesn't occur. It also boosts your other caffeine intake, whether you're a coffee drinker like myself or any other energy drink that you choose to intake. If you take Magic Mind along with it, it will continue to boost that caffeine throughout your day. If you take it throughout the week, it builds and builds as you take it daily. So can't recommend Magic Mind enough here on the Country Roads Webcast. And of course, you can get a great discount from us here on the CRW if you just go to magicmind.com/countrylt, enter the code countrylt20 at checkout. You can get 48% off your one-time subscription or 20% off a one-time purchase there. And I promise your mind will thank you for that purchase of Magic Mind. Head over to magicmind.com/countrylt, enter the code countrylt20 at checkout, and it is magic for your mind there that will continue to produce for you day in and day out, like we hope West Virginia produces day in and day out moving forward here in the 2024 season. So we've talked a lot about, the season up to this point. We've talked stats, we've talked our expectations moving forward. But guys, any final thoughts here before we get into week 5 of the Big 12 season, kind of make our picks around the conference here? Anything you wanted to touch on there, Brad?
No, man, a lot more football to be played. We got a week without Mountaineers. So.
Yeah, let's see what the rest of the conference has going on here in week 5. West Virginia a week off, which I think could be advantageous to us. Utah is a very tough team when it comes to, laying the lumber, coming down there playing a very physical brand of football. Oklahoma State already had to face them. If there's another team that's as close to as physical as them in the Big 12, it's probably Kansas State. And Oklahoma State has to face them this week. So West Virginia may be in an advantageous position heading into next week where they will take on the Cowboys in Stillwater. Not a place that they've had a ton of success, but, maybe Oklahoma State comes into that a little bit worn down heading into that game as West Virginia has a bye week to prepare for them. We've touched on the areas that they need to improve. We've touched on the stats. But, Stephen, any other thoughts here on the first 4 weeks of the season before we get into kind of our Big 12 predictions here for week 5?
Nope. I just hope that they can prove me wrong and compete a little bit more than what I'm giving them credit for right now.
Agreed, man. We got to have some improvements moving forward, especially when it comes to the defensive side, when it comes to the back end of that defense. If not, West Virginia may have to win a lot of shootouts. But, that remains to be seen. They've got a bye week to get some things corrected. They proved here in this game against Kansas that they're willing to make, some changes, whether it be the starting personnel or the way that they're scheming things up, and even the coaches with Jordan Leslie moving to the press box. Hopefully that proves to be advantageous moving forward as well for the Mountaineers. But definitely some improvements to be made in this 2024 season if they want to have a chance to compete in this Big 12 conference, which seems wide open. But as we touch on that Big 12 conference, there are still some games going on here in week 5. Even though the Mountaineers are off, we got a lot of games, interconference matchups here going on. So let's make our picks here, gentlemen. Let's get into our around the Big 12 segment here in week 5, and let's make our picks here for week 5 in the Big 12 slate. Let's pull this up here and let's talk a little bit about this. BYU and Baylor, the first game we want to talk about. It's going to be a noon kick on Fox Sports 1 there in Waco. Baylor coming off a tough loss, probably a game they should have won against Colorado. And BYU, the big upset. They're sitting at 4-0 in the conference, traveling to Waco there Tough matchup here for BYU, hitting the road, heading to a tough place to play in Waco. But BYU has impressed us far in the 2024 season. How are you feeling about this matchup here in week 5, Brad? Do you got BYU coming home with the W, continuing that unbeaten streak, or do you think Baylor bounces back? What are your thoughts here on this matchup between BYU and Baylor?
I do think BYU wins this, but I think that Baylor could be a little sneaky at home. You can never really count them out. So, but BYU, man, let's go Cougars.
Hey, let's go Cougs. You know, I think that our other co-host here, Steven, has maybe been the biggest proponent of the BYU Cougars here in the 2024 season, and he's proved to be very mindful in that aspect as they have come out super hot here in 2024. I don't think a lot of people expected them to beat Kansas State and especially to dominate Kansas State the way that they did, but Steven, do you think they can keep that hot streak going here in 2024? Do you think they can move to 5-0, heading onto the road, taking on the Bears here, week 5 of the Big 12 season, noon kickoff there in Waco on Fox Sports 1? Do you got BYU getting another win, man?
You know, something's telling me to pick Baylor, but until BYU loses, I'm gonna keep picking them. So go Cougs, go Cougars, whatever they say
Hey
on
man, let's
on
we
this.
may as well
Yes.
make it unanimous here. Storm and Mormons, go Cougs, whatever the hell you want to call it. I think that BYU has shown they have a good defense, they have a good enough offense to get it done. Dave Aranda's on the hot seat, got his back against the wall. He needs a win here, but I don't know if he'll be able to get it. BYU traveling all the way across the country. I think they moved to 5-0 on the season as well. Let's make it unanimous, 3-3. BYU gets the win there. The next game here is going to be our game of the week, so we will come back to this one. Obviously, a lot of interest from Mountaineer Nation on that one, but we'll come back to that. Then we have TCU heading on the road to the team that West Virginia just played, the Kansas Jayhawks there. Obviously, not in Lawrence, Kansas, working on rebuilding that stadium. So they're playing this one in Kansas City. TCU coming off a rivalry loss to SMU. They had their coach get ejected in that game. Kansas sitting at 1-3. They're back against the wall. It's going to be a 3:30 Eastern kick on ESPN Plus. Interesting matchup here between TCU and Kansas. Kind of two teams that are maybe struggling more than they expected in 2024, Steven. But who do you have coming out on top here in this one?
Actually, I think Kansas actually pulls this one out. I know TCU's proven that they can be tough, but I don't know that they seem to be regressing really, really fast in the beginning of the season. So, actually got rock chalk in this one.
I don't blame you, man. I don't blame you there for that pick. I think that Kansas is not as bad of a team as their 1-3 record shows. So honestly, I think I'm going to agree with you here, especially playing at essentially home here. And like I said, they're playing their home games at different stadiums throughout this 2024 season as they look to rebuild their stadium. But I think that Kansas has shown that they're able to run the football. Jalen Daniels has struggled a little bit, but I think it's only a matter of time before he gets back right and looks like the Jalen Daniels of old. TCU maybe reeling a little bit, especially after their coach gets kicked out last game to lose to their rival in SMU. They're traveling on the road to play a road game here. I think Kansas is going to be able to run the football. I think they'll control this game. And I'm going to go with the Jayhawks here as well. I'm going to agree with you, Steven. I think Kansas gets the win here. But, Brad, how are you feeling about this game between TCU and Kansas as we get into some Big 12 conference games here in 2024?
Yeah, ditto on everything you said, man. Kansas definitely looking to get right. TCU reeling. Give me Kansas at home all day on this one.
Hey, I like it. We're all in agreement thus far here on this week here in week 5 in the Big 12 Conference. Kansas getting the win there on ESPN Plus at 3:30. Additionally, another 3:30 Eastern kick here. This one will be on Fox. Colorado coming off a kind of impressive come from behind win over Baylor. They hit the Hail Mary. They get the win in overtime, but they've got to hit the road. They've got to travel to the bounce house there at UCF. And I think UCF may be kind of one of the surprise teams in the Big 12 here in 2024. They're looking like a conference competitor. I really like what they've shown thus far. And at 3:30 Eastern on Fox, I think they're going to find a way to get this done. I've got UCF by 10 plus points probably personally. I don't think Colorado will be able to contend with them in my own opinion. But Brad, how are you feeling about this one? Do you agree with me? UCF gets a W over Colorado?
Yeah, Colorado is going to get bounced. UCF by 50.
Oh, he said UCF by 50 in the bounce house. Going to bounce them straight out of that. Steven, how about you, man? How are you feeling about this game? The Buffaloes heading to Orlando to take on the Knights.
Yeah, I think UCF rolls them.
Yeah. So we're all in agreement there. UCF handily over the Colorado Buffaloes. I think the UCF has impressed thus far in 2024, and hopefully they continue that here this coming Saturday. Then we have Iowa State heading into Houston, taking on the Houston Cougars, obviously in a rebuilding mode. Willie Fritz, I think he's a good coach, but kind of got a bigger cupboard there that Dana Holgerson left him. And Houston may be looking like the worst team in the Big 12 this upcoming season, unfortunately. Whereas Iowa State looks like a competitor within this conference. Rocco Becht looks good. Noel at receiver looks good. They have a formidable offense, and we know that John Haycock always has a formidable defense as well. Heading into Houston there, 7 o'clock Eastern time kick there on Fox Sports 1. Steven, who do you have coming out on top here? Iowa State on the road at Houston.
Yeah, I like Rocco Beckton and the Cyclones. I'm gonna take Iowa State.
Good pick there. Can't say I disagree with you, man. I think Iowa State has cruised thus far through the 2024 season, and I see no signs of stopping here against Houston. I'm going to roll with Iowa State as well. Brad, what about you, my friend?
Yeah, for sure. Going to keep it with Iowa State. Houston, I feel bad for you. If anybody can relate what it's like to be a football program after Dana Holgerson was your head coach, it's us. So
Facts.
feel for y'all. You got the world is your oyster ahead of you. I'm glad Dana Holgerson's gone.
Couldn't agree more with you there on that one. So we're all unanimous there on that one as well. And then we got an interesting matchup here, 8 o'clock Eastern on ESPN2. Cincinnati heads into Lubbock. You know, the Red Raiders seem like a completely different team there under Joey McGuire at home versus when they play on the road. So at home here, got to think they have a better chance. But Cincinnati, you know, I think looks like a much improved football club here in 2024. So it's an interesting matchup as the Bearcats head into Lubbock there to take on the Red Raiders. Brad, what do you think comes out as the outcome here as Cincinnati travels there to take on Texas Tech on ESPN2 at 8 o'clock Eastern?
Yeah, I think Cincinnati's going to get lost. So they're going to be looking around like, oh, I'm out in Texas. I'm out in Lubbock. Where is that? It's out in the middle of nowhere, Texas. Cincinnati is where it is. Welcome to it. I think Texas Tech scorches by them. I think Cincinnati wants to go home by the third quarter, and um, Texas Tech's going to have a fun, rowdy out atmosphere at 7 p.m. night game. Yeah, give me the Red Raiders all day on this one.
Yeah, tough place to play there in Lubbock, but not so fast, my friend. Not so fast.
Ooh,
I think that Cincinnati, like I said, they seem much improved here in 2024. Texas Tech has bounced back from the early season struggles. I'll give them that. And as I said earlier, they do play better at home. But I think Cincinnati, they're maybe coming into their own there with that front line defensively now that Dante Corleone is back. I think they'll be able to stop Texas Tech's run game a little bit with Taj Brooks there. And hopefully, if they're able to do that, make Texas Tech one dimensional, force them to throw it through the air. They can get some stops. I like Sorsby on offense. I like Kiner on offense. I like Henderson out there at receiver. I think Cincinnati squeaks out a win. It'll be a close football game there in Lubbock, but I'm going with the Bearcats. Stephen, what about you in this conference matchup?
Yeah, I actually like the Bearcats in this one too. I'm gonna take Cincinnati.
Okay. Okay. So me and Stephen both taking Cincinnati. Bradley going with the Red Raiders. We'll see how that one pans out. Which brings us to the late kick here in the Big 12 in Week 5. Two new conference members here to the Big 12, Arizona and Utah. Utah finds a way to get the win over Oklahoma State last week, as we talked about in our Kansas review episode. No Cameron Rising, but their defense really performed well. Their running game really performed well. Now they're back at home for a 10:15 Eastern time kickoff there on ESPN. They welcome in Arizona. These two teams a little bit more familiar with each other, obviously having played in the Pac-12 conference. Now they're playing as Big 12 conference members. Arizona traveling there to Salt Lake. Steven, how do you think this one pans out?
Uh, I hate to do it, but I'm gonna pick Utah this week.
How dare you?
Uh, I hate to do it. Gotta go with the gut feeling.
I don't
Gotta
blame
go
you,
with the gut
man. I don't
feeling.
blame you.
No other
Utah,
reason.
you know, as much as we've hated on them early in the season, and especially their fans, how they've come into this thing and they're going to run the Big 12, their defense really did show me
No,
something
it's still
there
F them.
last
It's
week
still
against
F
Oklahoma
those
State.
guys.
I 100% agree with you. 100% agree with you.
They
100% agree
remind
with
me,
you.
you know what I said this to my papa the other day. You know who they remind me of? They're like the Western version of Florida State to me. They even do like a different rendition of a Native American like war chant,
Yeah.
which like that part's actually kind of cool. I'm not gonna lie, but that's who they remind me of. So that's why that and their fans are just like Florida State 2.0.
Yeah. I could see that 100%. I could see that. But as much as I hate on Utah, they do kind of have this thing where they're like, "Buckle your chin straps. We're going to come at you full force. We're going to play a physical brand of football." Which, as bad as I hate their fans and how they thought they were going to come into the Big 12 and dominate, I really do like that physical aspect of their gameplay. But I'm still picking Arizona because I'm just hoping to be, a little bit of wishful thinking, maybe, manifest destiny, have Arizona go in there and pick up an upset. Maybe Fafita and McMillan get it going against that Utah defense and get the win. Hoping against hope here, but I'm going to go with Arizona just for that reason alone. I just refuse to pick Utah, man. I just can't bring myself to do it in this week. So I'm going to go with Arizona, getting the upset there on the road in Salt Lake. Brad, what about you, my friend?
Yeah, I was on the fence too until after seeing the way Jordan yelled at Steven, so I'll go Arizona as well.
That's right. That's right. Because I would yell at you as
How
well.
dare
I
you?
would yell at you as well. I will
It's
yell
not
at
nearly
anyone that
as
picks
bad as what he
Utah
just
on this
did.
show. Yeah, yeah, it's just
I
not right.
cannot
We
wait
we
until we
we
play them in
respect the
Morgan County.
BYU fan base, but the Utah fan base, no, can't do it.
No, thank you.
And then the Utah fans talk about BYU fans like they're the worst people in the world. I'm like, have you met them? Like, they might not be the nicest people to you guys, but like, have you met yourselves?
Did you hear what
They're
Avery
kind of
Johnson
assholes.
said
Oh,
after
about
that
the
after
triple
that
bed
game?
guy?
Avery Johnson said that the BYU fans were
Oh yeah,
really like almost it's like a weird atmosphere because they're almost like complimentary despite the fact of being rabid.
buddy. Did you hear what the BYU fans did?
No,
So there's apparently an organization that Avery Johnson had pledged to donate a certain amount of money for every touchdown that he scored. Long story short, he didn't score one, but the BYU fans matched his contribution and even tripled it to the organization that he was going to donate to after the game. And I don't. How can you hate on something like that? That's cool, and
that's
that's not the
that's
first time they've done
incredible.
that. It was apparently like a long list of like situations that the BYU fans have shown up and like shown out and events like that. I think that's the coolest thing ever.
Just another reason to love the BYU fan base if we don't have enough already.
Yep. Yeah, I'm
Mm-hmm.
picking Utah. Go Wildcats.
Hey, go Wildcats. That's right. That's right. I respect that. I respect that. Which brings us to our final game here in week 5, our game of the week here on the CRW, Oklahoma State and Kansas State, which obviously has a lot of implications for Mountaineer Nation. Play Oklahoma State in a couple of weeks, play Kansas State, 2 weeks after that. Oklahoma State on the road, Kansas State comes into Morgantown. But both these teams need to win. Oklahoma State coming off a loss to Utah, who we just talked about. Kansas State coming off an upset loss to BYU. This game takes place in Manhattan at noon on ESPN. I'll certainly be tuned into this one. But the Cowboys traveling to take on the Wildcats, Brad. This is an interesting matchup right here. Two top 25 teams. Obviously, West Virginia going to take on one of them in a couple of weeks. But who do you think comes on top here between Oklahoma State and Kansas State?
It's going to be a fun one. It's going to be a fun one to watch. It's going to be two good offenses, two good defenses, just two solid teams all the way around. But brother, give me Gundy. I just believe in him. I believe in what they do. I think Kansas State's a good team, but I think Oklahoma State's looking to get it right.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, man, because, going into the season, I had Kansas State as my kind of favorite to win the conference, had them playing the Mountaineers in the conference championship game. But I think, for our purposes, as far as Mountaineer Nation is concerned, I don't want Oklahoma State to come into our game next week with two straight losses. So maybe it's another another little bit of me trying to manifest something here, but I'm going to go with Oklahoma State as well. Like you said, never bet against Gundy. I think even on the road, Manhattan's a tough place to play there in the Little Apple. Kansas State's probably upset that they got beat by BYU as bad as they did, but Gundy finds a way, man. He always finds a way, and hopefully for our purposes, Oklahoma State finds a way to get it done. Ollie Gordon's been held under 50 yards rushing the past 3 games. Maybe this is the game where he finally gets loose a little bit, and I think Oklahoma State will need it if they want to come out on top. Kansas State's probably going to be the favorite, but Gundy's a guy, man. You can never bet against him. So I'm going with the Cowboys. Steven, what about you?
Yeah, I'm picking State.
You're picking State?
Yeah.
Which state?
No, yeah, I'm rocking with. I'm going to go with Oklahoma State. I still think that they're very much the leading contender to win the conference this year, and they're going to be the team to beat. So hopefully West Virginia can come out and prove me wrong on that in a couple of weeks and get a win out there. But yeah, I got to rock with the Cowboys.
Yeah, we're all taking the road team in the game of the week this week, and hopefully Oklahoma State gets it done over the Wildcats as West Virginia heads into Stillwater to take them on in a couple of weeks. But that's what we got here as far as the Round the Big 12 segment is concerned here in week 5. That's our picks here. This week, as we look at that slate here, West Virginia is off, but there's a lot of fun games around the conference going on this week. So, having said that, gentlemen, we've done some stat review. We've talked a little bit about our kind of revised season predictions, and of course, took a look around the Big 12. Any final thoughts here as we get set to wrap up episode 198, Stephen?
Nope. I don't know if I've ever felt like I needed a bye week. I'm usually like dreading it, and like I'm like, man, like really wish I could watch some West Virginia football this weekend. But this time, I'm like, I'm just so emotionally exhausted from the
Yeah.
first 4 weeks of football that I'm like, I need this bye week as a fan. Uh, so yeah,
Yeah, owe to be other fans to have not two FBS Power Five programs in your first 3 games.
Yeah. Glad to see this is kind of one of the last seasons that we'll have to do that and
yeah,
play, 11 Power 5 teams. So not mad about that one bit myself. West Virginia needed this bye week. And I think that's one thing, a lot of people talked about the tough schedule coming into 2024, but I think our bye weeks are well positioned. We need this one to get healthy before the Oklahoma State game. We talked about them having to play a couple of games against kind of the top upper tier echelon conference teams before they play us. And then, of course, our other one comes at a good time as well. So we really don't play, back-to-back road games this season without a bye week in between. So I think that's nice for us. That's one thing that I will add heading into this bye week for the Mountaineers. But Brad, any other final thoughts here as West Virginia gets set to head in this first bye week of 2 that they have here in 2024? We've talked about Neil Brown kind of struggling off of bye weeks. We're hoping they can rectify that and get a win on the road at Oklahoma State. We'll preview that game here in about a week or so time. But any other thoughts on the Mountaineers 2024 season up to this point?
No, man, it feels good to be back. Feels good to talk about it. 2-2 is better than 1-3.
Agreed. Big difference there
1-0 in
between
the
2
Big
and 2 and
12.
1 and 3.
Let's keep going. Yeah, just keep focused. Next game up.
That's
Rest
right.
up. Reload. Let's go.
That's right. Let's go 1-0 each week and see where we sit when it comes down to it with the conference race, because got as good a chance as anyone as it stands here in 2024. I think we've shown that, of course, over the past couple of weeks when the conference play starting. One of these Big 12 teams that gets into that conference title game may have a couple of losses. And like I said earlier, why not West Virginia? We've got a great chance to get in there. Just got to take this week by week. And we've got the bye week coming here at the perfect time for the Mountaineers. So having said that, guys, the last thing I want to mention is I appreciate you all tuning into this episode, whether you watched it on YouTube. If you did do that, be sure to hit that thumbs up button, give us a like on the video. It really helps a ton with the YouTube algorithm. Subscribe here for a ton of Mountaineer football content moving forward here in 2024. If you listen on the audio side, we appreciate that as well. You can tune in on any podcast platform you choose, whether it be Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, you name it. just find us there at Country Roads Webcast. Leave us a rating, preferably a 5-star one. And thank you to WVSportsNow.com for hosting our episodes there as well. Having said that, we'll be back next week to preview our game against the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Should be a fun one there. Neil Brown's got a chance to get that monkey off his back as far as getting a win over, a possibly ranked team is concerned. It's a big game for West Virginia to continue to stay competitive in this Big 12 conference race, and we'll be covering it here on the CRW. As always, thank you to my co-hosts Bradley and Steven here, helping to contribute to this episode as we cover this bye week and look forward to week 5 in the Big 12 conference season. And we continue to cover the Mountaineers football season here in 2024. Should be a fun one regardless of the outcome. We'll be here each and every week to help talk about it with you guys. And we appreciate your thoughts as well. Throw them in the comments there. We always appreciate those interactions. As always, I'm Jordan Cruz. And until next time, let's go Mountain.
If you really want to know, then come on, let's go. Take a stroll down those